All right, everybody, welcome to our open source panel. I'm so curious with how long all our attendees here have been with us today. So we did this very early in the day, actually the very beginning of the day, and I'd love to do it again. In the chat is here where everyone is dialing in from. Oh, wow. Still got folks from over in Europe dialed in. Fantastic. Well, welcome everybody. Keep them coming. Keep those locations coming. I want to see where you are. My name is Lindsey Christensen. I'm the head of marketing at thoughtbot. And you probably recognize me from your reminder emails and sending you the links to join and then reminding you about the links to join and some social media. And I've attended all the sessions today. It's been really fantastic. And I'm very excited to get to moderate this panel of some of our open source maintainers and hear a bit more about what that's like for them and what their projects are. I've prepared some questions, but I need all of your help too. So please drop your questions for our panel in the chat, and I'll try to keep tabs on that as we go along. So we can learn all about you. So a really, really quick round. We've got Johny, who's the author of Superglue, Elaina, who launched her project Roux today. Nick just released Administrate 1.0 live in his session. So we need to hear about that. And that Rémy, who gave our opening keynote, is the author of Astronoby, which is a scientific astronomy gem passion project. So we got to dig in to that as well. So I think a good way for you all to kind of dive into a little bit more of your own bios is to maybe learn about your role and your open source origin story as it is. And before we get into your projects, I didn't tell you about this question, so curveball already. I was wondering, do you remember the first open source project you ever contributed to at all? Or maybe used? The answer is no. It goes too far back. Does anyone remember?
I do, yeah. I contributed some PHP stuff very early on. That was like when I started off as a developer.
What year was
Um,
that?
2010, 2012, something like that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
submitted some documentation for Neo4j, which is a graph library back when it wasn't the rage yet.
Very cool. Okay, so getting into your projects. So these tools tackle real world challenges that our teams face every day. Design systems, Rails React integration, admin dashboards, performance insights. So we'll unpack where they came from and what's next. So maybe starting with Johny and Elaina, open source authors of thoughtbot open source authors. What problems, Johny, let's start with you. What problem were you trying to solve when you first built it? And maybe you can give us a little bit of your bio in that intro as well.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Johny. I am the development team lead here at thoughtbot. I'm also the author of Superglue, as well as a few other libraries here. I would say it was about a decade ago or more, and I just didn't like the complexity of how single page application works. It was annoying, and it sucked having two separate repos to create what is supposed to be simple functionality, but took me too long. So I set out to kind of like try to answer the question of can things be better? And I truly believe that it can, and that there is some compatibility between Rails and React that we haven't really explored yet. That's it for me.
Thank you. Elaina, how about you?
Hi. um, yeah, I just launched Roux, ROUX, like the sort of starter for stews and soups and all that kind of stuff. And we named it that because it's what it is it's a sort of a foundational piece of CSS to start your projects. So some like form styling, button styling, modal styling, list stuff. And the problem it's not the problem, but the thing that came up a lot on projects where we were going into implementation was a question on, both our side and also on client side of like, where do I start with CSS? How do I start my project? And this comes from the idea of like, well, we don't necessarily need Tailwind or some kind of framework to build off of. Like we can use native CSS to build something really scalable, really maintainable, but we need sort of a solid foundation first. So I usually come into projects with a lot of those foundational pieces, boilerplates for CSS, and so just sort of built up that over the years and put it into a project that you can copy over. It's like really hands off, but it's more meant to empower people to really dig into CSS because it's so powerful now with native CSS. We also have a project called Bitters that was based on Bourbon, but because we've like sunsetted all of that and native CSS can do so much, that was the basis for it to make you feel more comfortable with using CSS and writing it.
And for you two, what made you want this to be an open source project as opposed to just a tool that you would use or maybe thoughtbotters would use?
I didn't know there was a different alternative. Open source was my like default, so my answer is pretty simple. I always start with open source because hopefully someday someone could notice and contribute.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just the default way for like sharing things, even if it's like something that like for me that only ends up getting used by other thoughtbotters. I count that as a win. It's also selfishly a way to uh, keep myself accountable of like adding to it and making sure things are up to date or like maintaining it in some way. But I also think, people have a lot of different ideas about these projects, and I welcome those ideas. And I think the web is a whole group project, so might as well just add to it, see what people have to say.
You said that when we were prepping, basically for me to understand what Roux was, that the web is a group project, and now I like wake up thinking that every day. I'm like, the web is a group project. Nick, so you maintain Administrate, but I believe you are not an author. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your Administrate journey?
Absolutely. So yeah, I maintain Administrate. I have done for about 8 years, I think. There's a few other gems that I've been involved in as well over that time. So it's not just that. And like parts of Administrate is broken out into fields that you can add. So you can add functionality on if you want to. The idea being it can be extended as desired. And so there's a few of those as well. But yeah, I started working on Administrate from knowing that it was a good solution to the problem. I've worked with there's thousands of admin dashboard solutions around. And so I've worked with most of them. and I like the way it worked, like conceptually. But as often happens, like it was started by somebody who used to work at thoughtbot, and then they left, and then as is often the case, that nothing really happened with it for a long time. But it already built up a fair amount of users, and so eventually people started getting a bit grumpy about it. And so that was like the start of me going, hold on a minute, I can probably jump in here and help out. And so I spent a lot of time then from at that beginning point, tidying stuff up and getting to know the code base as well as I could, and trying to keep on top of new incoming things. And that created a massive interest in the project. And it's broadly stayed the same. It sort of goes up and down. So some months there's not very much activity, and then other months there's loads. But as is often the case with these things, it's like the more you're able to put into it, the more you end up getting out of it. So if I respond to lots of people's issues, then you'll find that more people open issues and respond to them and start to contribute to PRs, which is a blessing and a curse because there's only so many hours in the day.
And so Administrate is for admin dashboards.
Right. So probably every product that ever gets built needs some way to, in the most basic way, change records and update them and all the rest. And it's like someone's always asking for that kind of thing, and so it's always on the list of jobs to be done when you're trying to build something. And that's what it does. So it's a set of generators. You run them against your code base. So you've got your model set up and so forth already, and then you run the generators, and then in an afternoon, hopefully you have an admin dashboard with all being able to configure all the things you want to be able to configure in your application. That's the idea behind it.
And do you know how many users or downloads it's had over the years?
You could total it up through like the gem downloads, although I'm never quite sure how accurate they are. But we know we don't capture any telemetry, so I don't have any idea of how many people use it. I don't even know how many client projects it gets used in, even. Like, I've used it on a few, although not that many. Like, so one of the things of being a maintainer or something is often you don't actually get to use it yourself because you're busy off doing other things. And then every so often someone will come up and mention something in our work Slack and be like, oh, I was using Administrate for this. And I was like, all right, I have no idea you were doing that. That's fun.
Okay, new project. We have to figure out who's using Administrate. Rémy, okay, let's dig into Astronoby a little bit. It's a little bit different. It's a scientific gem. What got you into that space, and what started the creation of this? Plus, please reintroduce yourself to the audience.
Hello everyone, so I'm Rémy Hannequin, I'm senior developer at thoughtbot. And I started working on Astronoby first to understand how some astronomical calculations were made and try to provide them openly. I was using some websites showing the data, but not exactly explaining how the data was calculated. Turns out that some libraries already exist in Python, but I wanted to do it in Ruby because many of us here, we use Ruby and we love it for good reasons. We love the language and all the patterns that emerge from it. So I just wanted to do kind of the same. It's not because it's available in another language that you absolutely have to change your own language and change your product to fit with that requirement. You can think in another way. And also, what Python does, typically Ruby can do it as well. So it's just that Python benefits from years and years of a virtuous cycle where some scientific projects started and some other were based on them and again. So in the end, a whole ecosystem emerged, and kind of the same happened in Ruby, but for the web, for web development. But nothing prevents really to do the same for the scientific community in Ruby as well.
So you're saying Ruby is better than Python?
That's a hard stance. I
You
personally
won't let me
prefer it.
quote you.
I prefer it, to be honest. I prefer
And it
the
can do
way.
the job, it sounds like.
Yeah, in terms of precision, performance, Ruby can do basically the same, but probably in a better way, in my opinion, in the way I like to code. So why not do it in Ruby?
Amazing. And do you know who or what it's being used for right now?
It's not very popular. I mean, I don't think a lot of us have many use cases of knowing exactly where the sun or the moon are 20 years from now, but it can happen. I know one weather app that uses it, and was a client for thoughtbot. We worked together on that. So technically, Astronoby is used in production in a weather app that is used by many users. It's called Hello Weather. Uh, Probably elsewhere, I got some contributions, but it's still not very popular. Maybe it will never be, but it's not really the main goal.
And am I right, you had some releases today?
Yeah, I did a release of Astronoby 0.9 today. It includes support for deep sky objects position like galaxies and clusters, things like that. But mainly, I'm also releasing a new website based on Astronoby and Rails to provide and show this data. And that was kind of my main goal for the last 10 years when I started thinking of computing and astronomy at the same time, because the website is open source and Astronoby is as well. So technically, you can have all the chain of logic and algorithm from the basic data to actually knowing where the object is in the sky and showing it in your website and having the data. So it turns the whole astronomical experience fully open source. And I didn't see a lot of initiatives like that. So I was really, it was one of my main goals for the last 10 years.
Amazing. Congrats. Lots to celebrate today. All right, heading back to Elaina and Johny, both of your projects, deal with the front end. And I'm wondering if I'm accurate in kind of boiling it down to, at the end of the day, a lot of what you're trying to accomplish is like breaking down the divide between the back end and the front end, or how you think about kind of like the North Star of your projects and how they might actually bring teams together in a way.
Yeah, mine's breaking down the front end and the front of the front end, I guess. But I think Roux is more like the whole ethos behind it is to make you feel more confident in writing CSS, and instead of obfuscating it behind like a framework, or using something like Tailwind or a UI library, you're taking actual CSS and putting it in and having like a good foundation to work off of. And you can also just take what you need. I think there's a lot of stuff written in there that has opinions, but the whole ethos is you don't need to take it all. You can take all the bits and pieces that you want. And so I think the hope is that it breaks down divides by being as hands off as possible, and more being a a guideline for you, an encouraging guideline.
What would be like a typical use case, you think, of someone reaching for Roux?
I think starting a new project and you want to not use something like Tailwind, and get started up quickly because you're interested in how CSS works and scaling it effectively. I think you can integrate it into projects that already exist, but it will just because it's sort of like the in the cascade, it's going to come like, before, I mean, any other styles you applied, it might like adjust things. And so you might have to do some changes there to account for those shifts. But it is really great if you're just like, I'm starting something new. I want to integrate some patterns that make sense, that apply globally to a lot of different elements, like form elements and buttons and image elements. And I want to get going quickly.
And you mentioned to me that it was something you were kind of unintentionally building, or like sharing with folks that were getting up and started, and then you were like, I think this is like a thing.
Yeah, I feel like everyone else can probably chime in on this call, but I think everyone has their own like default and boilerplate little things, helpers and whatever that they like infuse on a lot of projects that tend to be agnostic to the project itself. It's just like, oh, I use this all the time. Like I'm going to use it across the board. I started building it like a bit more in gusto, maybe like 3 or 4 months ago, when a former thoughtbotter is working at a different place. Was like, what do you use for your boilerplate of things? Because I'm starting a new project. And I had to think about it. And I was like, oh, I have a lot of things in a lot of different places, but I haven't really put it all into one spot. So I did. And then that grew into like, oh, maybe we should just make that open source so other people can use it.
Perfect. A tale as old as time.
Of course.
Johny, what about for you? Are you trying to unify the back end and the front end, or what rings more true to your vision?
Good question. I think I don't see it as a divide as much as injecting an opinion into this tool that doesn't have an opinion. What I mean is React by itself is simple, but what it lacks is a disciplined opinion about conventions and how to work. And I believe in the Rails way, that it can be applied to more than just Rails. It could be applied to more than just web applications. And my goal isn't necessarily a bridge, but to bring opinions over in such a way that's comprehensive and familiar to a lot of people. And that's what makes it seem like I'm bridging a divide. In a way I am, but also in a way I'm not quite doing that. I'm bringing an opinion.
And did you have a similar beginning to Elaina, of it was just something that you were kind of finding yourself having to work on or to build, and over time it developed into something, or how did that come about?
Yeah, it started out kind of simple. I just wanted to use Rails and React in a way I knew, but I didn't actually form my opinion about what I'm actually trying to do until years later when I'm like, oh, I think this is cohesive. I'm building something cohesive, not just like bits and pieces of string. I'm knitting something and it looks like a t-shirt. It's great.
I love that. All right. So heading back to our more established project, Administrate, that is in maybe probably thousands of apps, and which in turn kind of makes every change you make to the project high impact. And maybe others of you have worked on more kind of larger, more established projects and are faced with trade-offs. How do you face trade-offs you have to make to keep it simple for everyday use, which I know is important for Administrate, while also kind of hearing requests and feedbacks and trying to advance the project?
move slowly, deliberately slowly, like, and carefully. So we rarely deprecate code, but we use, there's a thing in active support for deprecation, so it's therefore supported in everyone's Rails applications. And so when we've removed stuff, they're there. Like, we do that so you can get them programmatically. So hopefully you have a test suite. And so when you run your tests, it should explode if you're using something, because that will help you catch it. And so when you get, like, let's say you're using Dependable or Renovate or one of the other things that help you bump your gems, your test suite should fail at that point. And that should be over a long period of time. It takes, you know, we want to be careful and deliberate in the way we go about making those changes. And the way I was sort of seeing it as having a responsibility for the other developers who are using it. So you don't want to be the gem that keeps releasing versions constantly, because honestly, I'm trying to solve other problems. I don't care about your gem. I don't want to keep screwing around with the API because someone keeps changing their mind. Like, slow down, be more conscious about what you're doing. Be careful with your change logs. Even like the first few lines people might read, so I usually try and put a bit of a blurb in there about the theme. And then just keep the relevant stuff in the rest of the README. I chomp out a lot of stuff where, like, no one should see it. Like, we update dems on the Administrator itself. No one needs to know that we update those, like, or the action version changes. No one needs that. Just keep it to the important changes. So when people do see the update, they go, oh, okay, right, I'll read that through and hopefully merge it in. And then over time, I hope that people realize that we are careful with what we do, and so they don't fear those changes. There's another aspect of this as well, where Administrate has a very, very broad Rails support. It supports, like, the current version and then, like, all the way back, well past all the Ruby and Rails versions, which are long out end of life. And it's something we see in client work. Like, people come to us and go, I've got this application, I've been running it for a really long time, it's been neglected, or the person who ran it has left, and it turns out that it's running something that seems horribly old. If you picked Administrate, it probably still works, which means you don't have, like, when you're upgrading a Rails application, you're often in, like, a race between, like, which thing supported, what can I move next, what can I move next. So you're trying to, like, pick your battles between each thing as you're trying to get them upgraded. If all the gems had a much broader support, then getting you upgraded is a lot easier, because you're not going, all right, Administrate's broken now, so I've got to fix that problem next. It's like, no, it still works, so you can leave it until you've gone through most of the more important security up. And there's deliberate things you can do as a maintainer to make sure that that's easy to do. And all the things I'm talking about aren't hard to do. Like, the amount of extra effort it takes is very minimal, just to be conscious about what you're changing, making sure the downstream impacts are fair on other people and so forth. So it's well worthwhile being more deliberate and conscious about what you're committing to the project.
And you said you've tried to keep Administrate kind of boring by design.
Yeah, so for a long time, aside from a few things, there's a few things that we just don't do generally. So with thoughtbot's creating a Rails application, we typically don't use namespaces, for example. So we won't namespace on models, and the origin of that is partly that it makes everything more complicated, but also, like, a lot of the things we're introducing on are the projects are a lot smaller, so you don't even have that kind of namespacing problem. Now, if you look back over time, a big sore point for Administrate was that it never really supported namespaces particularly very well. It's because we don't use it, so it's never something that come up. And so, oh no, I've forgotten my train of thought. Oh no.
Keeping Administrate boring.
Yeah.
Not doing
yes.
namespaces.
Right, yes. So we did eventually do get namespace supported, which was good. But it took a while to get there and, like, really iron out all the bits. But, like, most of what people's problems have been are the are not actually using Rails properly. So the only interesting thing Administrate does is reflect on your application and see how your models are wired up. And from that, it uses that to generate the code. And that's actually the only interesting thing it does, because the rest of it's like really, really boring stuff. And so you'd find for a long time that people wouldn't set their associations up correctly and it would explode. And so the answer would be like, that's your problem. And that sort of leads into keeping just one core bit that's interesting. Means the rest of it, we've succeeded in keeping boring, which means that people can override it. So they're just Rails controllers. So you know how a Rails controller works because you've built the rest of your application. And so you can go in and modify those and make them how you need. So when you get someone going, oh, it'd be really nice if we could do this, you can go, yeah, we can do that. That's not a problem. Because it should be familiar to it, because it's boring and it's Rails. And boring is good.
Okay, so Nick's doing slow, methodical, boring updates. Has anyone else done a big scary update? Have you ever worked on a project? I mean, it's Halloween, you know. Have you ever made a big scary spooky update and had an uproar? Everyone's too thoughtful probably for something like that. I can hope. Anyone in the comments ever make a big scary open source update? Not boring, it's disciplined. Yes, we love that. All right. Rémy, heading back to you. You know, it's one of the reasons we kind of put today together is to really celebrate open source, obviously, celebrate maintainers and contributors, because it's no easy feat. And a lot of times, you know, you're doing this in addition to your day job. Not many people are kind of doing this full time. How do you find the time to contribute? And do you have any maybe advice for other people who want to make the time or are thinking about maybe contributing for the first time to something?
Yeah, I mean, I feel personally really lucky because some of the work I've done on Astronoby and other projects, I've done them on investment time that we have at thoughtbot on Friday. So I have dedicated time for contributing to the community, either on this project or others. So obviously it helps. Not everybody has that, so it's also a lot of personal time. That's my choice. Not that you have to do that to contribute to open source, but I'm lucky enough that my hobby is also my job. So my job is my hobby, and I can do that on my personal time without feeling that it's work. But otherwise, there are many ways to enter this world. Either it's trying to contribute to something that you care about. It doesn't have to be a new feature. It doesn't have to be finding the biggest bug. It can be contributing to the documentation. I know it sounds boring, but to contribute to the documentation, you need to actually know how the project works. You need to make it work on your machine. And you will find things that are not perfect because there are always bugs and problems here and there. And by investing time in that, you're actually learning a lot from this project and from programming at all. Or you can also just open source your own projects because there are no projects that are not worth being out there for everyone else to see and everyone else to be inspired. I would really advocate for opening a lot of code and opening to collaboration. Yeah, it doesn't have to be big. It can start really, really small by just something that interests you, even if you think it's niche. You're never alone with niche projects. So you will find people that are sharing the same interests.
Thank you. Anyone else have either thoughts on like how you make time for it, or suggestions for others maybe considering dipping in a
Yeah,
bit more?
yeah. So it's part of the job. And so in lots of different ways. So one of the things is like you're using a lot of, one aspect of this is that you're using a lot of these tools in your day-to-day work. And so if you come across something, you should contribute back, and that should be part of doing that work. A lot of the contributions I've made over the years, even if it's just providing feedback on an issue to say, look, it works in these particular circumstances, because that takes a lot of time and it's super valuable for others, and that's part of just doing the job. If we didn't have the tools that we're building on top of, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing. And so in so many respects, it's up to you to make the time to do it during your day. But that's generally what I do. So assuming the client project I'm on is not so busy that I don't have the headspace to jump and look at something slightly different, I'll be skimming the incoming issues and so forth just during the day. So I've always had several years now had a review PRs block of time on my calendar, and I try to stick with it. I don't consistently do so, and look at what's happened across all the projects in the last while. And I try to do that every day for like 45 minutes. And if I do that consistently, 45 minutes really adds up, and you can do a lot of things in 45 minutes a day over a week.
Thank you. Johny, any thoughts on that one?
I think everyone's open source journey is unique and distinct. Mine is also as well. I started Superglue a decade ago. I didn't know where it was going to go, but for me, it's been an outlet where I could sink time into. When my kid was born, like I took shifts with my wife, and during my night shift, I needed something to do. And so I contributed open source. It's an outlet for happy times as well as unhappy times. I remember being unemployed and I needed something to do. Open source. And it works well for all occasions. And in that regard, like it's also unique, just like everyone else's story.
How about you, Elaina?
I feel like I'm such like a baby when it comes to like maintaining an open source. This is my first project and it's still so very new. So I found some time to work on it, but I think that what kind of keeps me going is I'm really invested in building for other people, making other people's lives better when it comes to development and knowledge sharing. And so I think that having that motivation, I think helps me to kind of keep thinking about it, and keep iterating on it, and problem solving around it. So yeah.
We'll check in with you next year and see how the journey has gone.
Sounds good.
And what about like, do you think it has made you a better developer contributing to open source, or like different kinds of projects? It's for anybody.
It is. I'll chime in. Superglue is composed of multiple open source projects. So you get to learn how to version things. Sometimes you accidentally push the master and you got to revert it. Sometimes you accidentally publish something you're not supposed to publish. And then you got to learn how to undo that. I think it's you're gonna run into a lot of problems that you have to solve yourself. Sometimes you're panicking. Ultimately, it's still a fun learning experience, and I'm learning lots from it, even today.
For me, it was mainly because when you're on open source project, you have to have a different point of view on the project. It's not like a regular project or regular features. You need to analyze and tackle the problems differently because you're not the only user, or you're not just a small team working on the code or depending on it. It can be anyone. So you need to be very careful, more careful than usual, I believe. More boring, like Nick said. But it's a good exercise to balance improvements, because you want to make new features and new things on your library to improve it. But you also want to be sure about compatibility for previous users or users not willing to upgrade. So it's a nice balance that you need to learn. And also, I feel like it make, like for Astronoby, for example, I didn't want to just rewrite a Python library in Python. I mentioned that I wanted to do it in Ruby because I love the language, and the language is different. So I really focused on making a nice API, a different one that other projects, something that really fits Ruby's DNA. So you need to learn that if you don't know it. I don't necessarily know from scratch how to write good Ruby code. So I had to learn it and to do my best towards that, learning patterns and other ways to provide a nice experience for the user. Not only for me to build something, but also for someone using the library to have fun and to just enjoy using it.
Okay, looking forward a little bit, I'm curious what's on the horizon for each of your projects. Is there something you have your eye set on, a goal for the near term or this coming year?
I
think
don't
for
know.
me-
Go on. Go ahead.
Sorry, Nick. I think for me, because it's so new, and just what I'm looking forward to is like feedback, any issues, people contributing, literally anything besides some of these initial commits I had. We worked with another developer, Jimmy, the other day to get a script in so you could copy over the files really easily. So that was great. And it was really exciting to have someone else contributing. So that's my baseline is um, having open source being open sourcey and getting some community feedback. And that's it. Go ahead, Nick.
Sorry, I think about this too much, I think, so I'm too excited about it. The main, I recently used Administrate on a client project for the first time in years, and built a custom field for it that uses Prometheus, which is like uses for metric storage. So you could view stuff in graphs and so forth. And it really helped to, whilst developing that field, to find problems in the library where it was worth focusing on. There's like two angles I want to focus on. And it's around extending it, which is half of that, maybe 75% of that job is a documentation thing, which really should help you open your mind to what you could do. Because I think people look at it and go, right, it's I can create simple admin dashboards, I can create, read and update and delete things. But it's like, no, you could do anything with it. You can put all your business metrics in it if you thought about it well enough. So that's like the one main thing I want to do over the next, it won't be this year, but going into next year. And the other thing is just deepening the testing. I think everything needs to be tested better. So I've been working on some acceptance testing stuff for a long time, which will allow you to, in the test, spin up the whole application from scratch and test the whole workflow. It's tricky, but I've gotten it working. I'm very excited about that.
Excellent. Rémy?
I would say just use cases, feedback, like Elaina said, feedback and knowing a bit more about use cases. I've built Kailus on top of Astronoby to showcase what Astronoby can do and display as much data as possible. But I'm sure that there are many use cases that I never thought about. And I mean, pun intended, but astronomical data is universal. So I really want to spread as many use cases and many data to anyone and learn what we could compute together. Yeah, and also other contributors would be really great, just for having new ideas and new perspectives. It would be really, really cool.
Astronomy is gonna get all the best puns, all the space puns. We've got plenty of those. Johny, and I'll teaser right now, I haven't mentioned yet, right after this panel is Johnny's dedicated Superglue session. So definitely stick around and get to see it in action a little bit. So if this doesn't take away from any of the, juice from your session, what's a goal for you coming up for Superglue?
I have so much, so little time. I want to do so many things. I want to finish Superglue 2.0 and release that. I think it's the most exciting release. I ported, or I stole Turbo Streams and put that into Superglue. It's been pretty neat to see, and I love to see people using it. I want to fix up the documentation. I want to support other JavaScript bundling tools. There's so much. I think ultimately, like, if there was a real priority for me, it would be to figure out how to make it nice for everyone to contribute. It's how do I like make it so that when people think of Superglue, they think of this project that's backed by so many nice people to talk to and to work with. And that's a hard to go, and I think that's what I want to ultimately do.
If anyone has questions for our panel, please drop them in the chat. I have another one, maybe full round the table. If you all have an answer, I think building, excuse me, building off your last answer, do you have in mind a specific thing, a specific issue, someone maybe in attendance today could actually jump in and pick up today, tomorrow for you?
On the stream, actually, we had an annoying problem where something's not rendering correctly and the tests fail only under certain versions of Rails. So if anyone wants to fix that, that would save us loads of digging in. We did the start of it for you, so you can pick up from there if you remember it.
And we'll have the recording later, so you can watch that. And we'll drop links in the Discord for any of the relevant things we've chatted about today. Johny.
The typing story for Superglue could be better. I'm faced with the decision of how to make it enjoyable to write types with Superglue and combine that with what Rails has out of the box. I would love some opinions. Go ahead. I'll paste a link to that issue, and I'd love to hear some opinions and criticisms.
I'll take anyone's contributions. Just you like CSS, make it happen. Make a PR for me. You have opinions on some boilerplate stuff they use in your projects, add it.
Get in there early.
Get
Be
in
a
there.
Roux thought leader. Make your
An early
name.
contributor,
This is
right?
a career opportunity.
Yeah.
We've got a question from our friend Rhiannon. What's an unexpected challenge you've encountered building in open source? So there's the challenges you expect. What has been a surprise roadblock challenge you've hit? No, have you hit any challenges?
One that comes to my mind is, for me particularly, it was scientific knowledge. Like I'm saying I'm doing an astronomy library and it's scientific, but I'm not a scientist and I don't have any degree and I actually don't know how the sky works. So I had to learn it and do a lot of a lot more than expected research to try to understand it and try to, how to say, to explain it without making too many mistakes. I know the code is not perfect, the algorithms are not perfect, and if you're an absolute professional astronomer, you might find some limitations at some point with the calculations. So that was challenging, but it's also a non-boundary because you know ultimately what's the kind of the best answer, and then you can work towards being better in precision and performance again and again for each version.
That's a really good one. All right, another question. How do you make it happen? From my perspective, it's very tough to get people doing open source. I have a couple of mentees, and it would be good if you could share some tips on how to engage them. Should invite them here today.
It's tricky without like a problem. So I think the best way to contribute is to have a problem, know that you can fix it, and then go ahead and try and fix it. And the best way to do that is to make things, and just make stuff for fun. And because it's this industry is like, it's a craft as much as it is anything else, and you really have to just do it to learn how stuff is. And so if you come across problems using the things that you find because you're building them, you've got an example use case where it doesn't work, and people will be more than happy to hear about what you've been doing. And as long as you follow the contributing guidelines, which most projects have done, and make it easy for the maintainers, you're going to be in a pretty good position to have a nice time. But I also say start with small projects if you want to contribute to things. Someone mentioned in the chat about trying to contribute to GNOME and GTK and stuff, and it's like that's always going to be an uphill struggle. But if you contribute to, say, Rémy's little astronomy project because you have a bit interest in it, then you are probably got like a 99.9% chance of getting your change merged in eventually, just because he cares about it, and so it will happen.
I think so it depends on what you mean by doing open source. And I say that because one of my most fond memories of open source was reading projects. I just trying to improve my craft by copying the skills of others. And the best way to do that is to find projects and copy their techniques, the development techniques. And my first project that I saw was Sinatra. It was a single file web application framework. That was an alternative to Ruby on Rails, and I learned so much from it. And so I think if you position it as a learning experience to help them upskill their craft, I think there's an opportunity to do that. It may not be contributing, but it is doing open source. That makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think we've got time for one more. Have you been surprised by how many people use your project or by a particular use case or feature request?
We were talking a little earlier about how I don't really know how many Administrate users there are. One of the things is that the only people who open issues or PRs are people who have had problems, and they are a fraction of the amount of people who are actually using it. And so when I've been at conferences or meetups and stuff, people are like, "Oh yeah, we've used that," and it often happens, and it's surprising. It's always surprising because it's like, "Oh right, yeah, I had no idea. I have no idea who you are," and you're using it, and that's really cool.
Amazing. Thank you. Well, I think that's a good spot to end. I'm going to give Johny a whole, 2 minutes before his next session on Superglue starts. So definitely stick around. Thank you so much to all of our panelists, Elaina, Nick, Rémy, and Johny, for participating. Thank you to our attendees for joining and contributing and asking great questions. As I mentioned, I think we'll definitely follow up in the Discord with links so you can see, check these out and contribute. And we'll get those mentees in there and active as well. So that's all for now, and stick around for the Superglue session next. Thanks again.
Thanks, Lindsey.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.